Man, that was something. That's pretty impressive. Well, listen, I shared with you guys earlier that I have 3 kids. I've got a 9-year-old, 6-year-old, and a 15-month-old. And all 3 of them, from the time they were born, they have loved to have story time at night. So when we go to bed at night, we lay down. They love a couple books to be read before they go to sleep. If we don't read a couple books, they get very upset about this. My oldest son's favorite book growing up, for whatever reason, was a book called Dinosaur versus the Potty. Now, it's amazing literature. It's about a dinosaur who tries to get to the potty before he has an accident. And now, obviously, obvious reasons, we're trying to teach our son at a certain age, this is an important thing. So, Dinosaur versus the Potty, great literature. But there's something about stories that my kids love. There's something about stories I think that all of us love. I think there's a reason the Bible is one big story from beginning to end, telling us about this love that God has for us. I mean, stories are compelling and stories are important. There was a story that I was told when I was a junior in high school, maybe a sophomore in high school. And this story was a story that changed my life. Hearing this one story did something in my heart that really changed everything for me, and again, changed kind of the trajectory of where my life was headed and the things that God was calling me to do. I would say that a large reason that I do what I do today in terms of ministry is because of this particular story that I heard when I was young. And so the story goes just like many stories you've probably heard before, and it starts by saying, in a land not so far away, a long, long time ago, there was this kingdom, and this kingdom had a wonderful king. And this king took care of all the people that were part of the kingdom. And over again, this kingdom was expanding and was inviting cities and towns to become a part of this kingdom. And each time there was an invitation, a city and a town said, yes, we want to be a part of the kingdom. We love this king. He's so good. He would protect. He would provide. He would take care of everyone within the kingdom. And so over and over again, cities were joining and towns were joining this kingdom. But there was one city, one town that said, we will never be a part of the kingdom, no matter what you do. And this king would often send different royal officials from the kingdom to invite the city once again to be part of the kingdom. And every single time they would say no. In fact, they would kill every royal official that came to town as soon as the king would send them. So finally, the king decided he had to do something different. So he decided what he was going to do is he was going to send his son. He would send his son to this city, this town, and certainly if he sent his son, they wouldn't kill his son. Maybe they would respond to the invitation, finally be a part of the kingdom. Now the city found out what was going to take place. They had heard about the king sending his son, so they gathered together in a room much like this, and the mayor said, here, listen guys, we got to talk, because as you know, we have successfully not been a part of this kingdom for a very, very long time. Everyone said, yes, we have, that's true, mayor. He said, but the problem is the king has decided to do something different. He's going to send his son. His son is coming tomorrow. We need to decide what we're going to do about this. So the mayor said, here's what we can do. There's an unwritten rule in our land, and the rule goes like this. If someone gives you a gift and you don't give a gift of equal or greater value in return, then we can do away with you, no questions asked. So here's what we'll do. We're going to give the king's son so many gifts, lavish him with so much stuff that he could not possibly give us a gift of equal or greater value. And when that happens, we can do away with him, and the king can say nothing about it. So everyone in the town said, that sounds like a wonderful idea. It's exactly what we'll do. Tomorrow we'll throw a party for the king's son when he comes to town, more gifts than he can give us in return, and he'll be done for, and no one can say anything about it. So they all went to bed. And the next day, the king's son came riding into town on his white horse. He was looking good. And he came into town, and people were hanging outside of windows, being like, King's son, we're so glad you're here. People welcoming down the street, children running and laughing. Everyone was so excited to see the king's son. They led him all the way into town, all the way to the center of town, where the building was they met them the day before. They welcomed him. He rode his horse up, tied his horse up, and walked inside alongside of some others. They went to the second floor into a room just like this. The room was ready for the party. There was a massive table all the way down the middle of the room, and it was covered with all kinds of food, the best kinds of food, like ham and turkey and zebra cakes and all the really good things all down the table, ready for a party with the king's son. Now the mayor said, okay, everyone have a seat, and so they all pulled their chairs up to the table, all sat together, including the king's son at the head of the table. And then the mayor snapped his fingers and said, now, do it, boys. And as soon as he snapped his finger, people jumped up and grabbed gifts and began to bring it to the king's son. They placed it all around his chair, piled high. There was Xboxes and ponies and all kinds of wonderful gifts. They began to stack all around the king's son, more gifts than he'd ever seen in his life, more gifts than anybody had ever seen in their lives, until eventually the king's son couldn't even be seen anymore. He was covered by all the gifts. And everyone sat back down and waited to see what the king's son would do. So he stood up from his chair. He took one box and he put it down, and he took another one, he put it down. And box after box until he could finally see everyone at the table once again. And the king's son reached into his pocket, he pulled out a piece of paper, he wrote something down, and he slid it across the table all the way to the mayor. The mayor took it, opened it up, and looked at it. and said, "Get him." And all of a sudden, everybody jumped up and grabbed the king's son, threw him on the ground. The table slid everywhere. Food was everywhere, jumping on top of the king's son, trying to keep him down, like off the tables, off the chairs, WWE style, laying on him, biting him, scratching him, grabbing his hair. And the king's son was grabbing legs, trying to get out of the room. And eventually, he got to a clearing where he jumped up, ran through the room, jumped out the window onto his white horse, and rode off to the kingdom. Now, as you can imagine, everyone was furious with each other. The mayor especially. You were supposed to guard the window. You were supposed to keep him from jumping out. But you were supposed to hold him down, bite him, scratch him, whatever it took. You're supposed to keep him there. Finally, the mayor said, "Everyone stop. Here's the truth of the matter. We just tried to kill the king's son, and we failed. And tomorrow, more than likely, we'll pay for it. The king will be here on our doorsteps, and it'll be over. So we might as well clean all this up, all the food, all the mess. We'll throw it in the dumpsters, and we'll all go to sleep." They agreed this was the best course of action, so they did. They cleaned everything up, and they went to bed. Now, the next day, inside of this city, there were 3 hags who lived here. You know what a hag is? You ever seen Wizard of Oz, right? Wicked Witch of the West? Hag. You ever seen Princess Bride? Anybody? Princess Bride? Remember the lady that's like, boo, boo, hag. Okay, so there's 3 of them in this town. They have really wonderful names. Hag number 1, hag number 2, and hag number 3. And what they do every single day is they try to eke out a living within this town. They go from place to place trying to find food here, food there, trying to eke out a living. And sure enough, they came upon this building where the party was the day before. They walked up, and the dumpster was full of food everywhere. And so hag number 1, she jumped right in and started digging through everything. And all of a sudden, she came out, and she said to the other hags, "Listen, ladies, we're rich." Hag number 2 is like, "What are you talking about?" Hag number 3 is like, "Yeah, we are not rich. You're in a dumpster right now. Whatever you found, it probably won't change anything." And hag number 2 is like, "Yeah, you're probably right." Hag number 1 is like, "No, you don't understand. What I have found inside of this dumpster right now changes everything. It changes our whole lives. It's gonna be a major difference maker for us." Hag number 2 is like, "Good point." Hag number 3 is like, "No, you don't understand. You couldn't have found anything inside of there that could really, truly change our lives. That can't possibly be something worth any kind of value. It's worthless." Hag number 2 said, "Good point." Hag number 1 is like, "No, you don't understand what I have. What I have right here is a piece of paper. And let me read it to you. It says this: 'To the bearer of this note, the desires of your heart.' And it's signed by the king's son." Hag number 2 was like, "Good point." Hag number 3 is like, "No, you don't understand. It's probably written in pencil, signed by the king's son. It doesn't matter. It won't make any kind of difference." Hag number 2, of course, said, "Good point. Thank you." So then hag number 1 is like, "No, you don't understand. If we take this note, if we travel all the way across the great desert, all the way to the kingdom, if we take it to the king, surely he has to honor it. It's signed by his son. We should totally do it." Hag number 2 said, "Good point, better." Hag number 3 is like, "No, you don't understand. We'll never make it through the great desert. It's called a great desert for a reason. We'll never make it. We'll die in the desert. We'll never make it to the kingdom." Hag number 2, one more time, "Good point." Hag number 1 finally convinced hag number 2 and hag number 3 that it was a good idea to leave, go across the great desert all the way to the kingdom. So they took off. They were excited at first, like clapping and dancing and yelling all the way to the kingdom to see if the king would see this note, the bearer of this note, the desires of your heart, signed by the king's son, and honor it. But sure enough, after each and every dune came another dune, and more sand and more hot sun, and eventually any water they had run out, any food they had run out, and hag number 1, number 2, and number 3 were parched. They couldn't believe they had done this. They come all the way out into the desert, and every time they come across the next hill, there was more. They never saw the kingdom. And sure enough, eventually hag number 2 would like fall down. The other 2 would pick her back up, keep everybody going. They had circled, highlighted, underlined everything on that note. "We can do it. We can make it. I promise you we can make it." Until eventually they came over one final dune. And as they did, they looked off into the distance. They could see the kingdom. And it was beautiful. It was gleaming gold. They'd never seen anything like it in their life. They ran down the other side of the dune, clapping and dancing once again. They finally made it. They went all the way up to the side of the kingdom, of these gates, and a huge door, and they walked up and they banged on the door. Bang, 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 bang. And nothing happened. So hag number 1 did it again. Bang, 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 bang. And nothing happened. So finally, hag number 3 pipes up. "I told you this is what they would do. If we came through the desert, this way probably do to all the hags. They let them come through the desert and let them die outside the kingdom." And as she was talking, all of a sudden, a small door inside the big door opened up, and someone said, "What do y'all want?" Hag number 1 was like, "Excuse me, hi, hag number 1, hag number 2, hag number 3. We've come a very long way through the desert. We have a note that's signed by the king's son. I know it's crazy, but we thought maybe if we came here, we talked to the king, maybe he would honor it. Could you let us in?" The door slammed, and the big doors began to open as wide as they could. As hag number 1, hag number 2, number 3 looked inside, they couldn't believe inside the kingdom. It was beautiful, gleaming streets of gold and children everywhere laughing, everyone having a wonderful time. It was a beautiful place. They'd never seen anything like it before. It was unlike anything they'd ever known. And they walked in, they followed the person who was leading them all the way down the streets, all the way to the middle of the kingdom where there was the castle. And they walked into the castle and they went to the second floor, and inside the castle was the huge throne room. And as they walked into the throne room, they could see all the way on the far end of the throne room the king seated on his throne, and right next to him, guess who it was? The king's son. And hag number 2 and hag number 1, number 3 can't believe they've made it inside the throne room. They walk all the way across in front of the king, and hag number 1 speaks up. Hello. Hi, king, live forever. Hi, I'm hag number 1. This is hag number 2. Hag number 3, apologize for our look. We just came through the great desert. It was very difficult. We nearly died, but we are here, and we have found a note inside of a dumpster. I know it sounds crazy, and it said, to the bearer of this note, the desires of your heart, and it's signed by your son. And so, crazy, we actually came, and we wanted to know if you would honor this note. So the king looked at hag number 1, 2, and 3, and he said, okay, what's the desires of your heart? Well, hag number 1 butted right in. Listen, king, live forever. This is so crazy. Hag number 1, I couldn't believe she talked us into this. I never thought we should do this, but sure enough, we came. We made it. And now you're offering us the desires of our heart. So I just thought I'd speak up first. Your kingdom is wonderful. And I was wondering if I could just live in the kingdom. That's all I would like. Just live in the kingdom, just barely make it in. If that could happen, that'd be wonderful. And the king said, done. Desires of your heart, welcome to the kingdom. And she cannot believe it. She's losing her mind. They take her out to her house in the kingdom. And the king looks at hag number 2 and says, okay, what's the desire of your heart? And hag number 2 said, well, king, what hag number 3 wanted is a lot. I mean, your kingdom is wonderful, but what I want is a little bit more, and I feel like it's maybe too much, and if it is, no problem, I'll go outside and die with the other hags. But if you would allow this would be what I really, really like. Could I possibly live in the castle? And the king looked at hag number 2 and said, done. If that's the desire of your heart, you can live in the castle. And she's like, no way. Take this hag to her room in the castle. And so they lead her out, and she's like, see you later. And she walks out, can't believe it. And the only person standing there now is hag number 1. And the king looks at hag number 1 and says, what's the desire of your heart? And hag number 1 says, well, what hag number 3 wanted is wonderful. Your kingdom is amazing. And your castle for hag number 2 is beautiful. I can't imagine. But what I want is it's a lot more. And I'm really nervous. My pits are sweaty. And I feel like I'm going to pass out if I ask this. But I am a little bit nervous. And the king said, well, go ahead and just ask. What's the desire of your heart? So it's a lot. It's kind of crazy. But I guess I'll ask. King, is your son married? And the king looked at his son. His son looked back at the king. And the son shook his head I will marry that woman. And the king said, you can marry my son. And she lost her mind, running around the room no way, did you hear what he said? And everyone's like, yes, we know. And the king said, listen, you can marry my son, but tomorrow it's time to pursue the king's son. So go ahead and leave, and tomorrow we'll start the pursuit of the king's son. She's like, no problem. And they let her out, and as soon as she left, she's like, I'll see you later. She went out, and they led her into this huge, beautiful garden. And in the middle of the garden was a massive fountain. She was looking around this is so beautiful, this is wonderful. And the 2 attendants that were with her, they're like, yes, it is. All of a sudden, they pushed her over and grabbed her by her hands and by her feet, and 1, 2, 3, heaved-ho her into the fountain. And she sunk like a hag rock all the way to the bottom, never got a chance to get a breath, so her lungs were burning from the very beginning. She was trying to find the wall. She didn't know which way it was up. She was burning. Every time she would take a swipe of her arm, it would hurt even worse. And finally, she hit the very bottom with the rocks. She pushed up as hard as she could and finally made it to the top and grabbed the side and brought life into her lungs once again and looked down into the water, and there was drips just dripping into the water, and it was distorting everything until eventually it stopped, and she could tell that she was no longer a hag. That all the blemishes, all the scars, everything was gone. Her dress wasn't tattered anymore. It was made perfect. It was made new. She'd been transformed. She could not believe what had taken place. So she crawled out of the fountain. She's like, I can't believe, look at, I'm beautiful. And the guys were like, yes, you're very beautiful. We know. No, you don't understand. Look what's happened to me. Everything has changed. I'm beautiful. Yes, you're very beautiful. Now come with us. It's time to pursue the king's son tomorrow. So come with us. They brought her to her room. And they opened the door and they let her inside. And inside of this room was only one bed, and there was mirrors all around. And she walked in and she couldn't believe the transformation. She was like, look at me, I can't believe this. This is so wonderful, I can't believe. And listen, tomorrow it's time to pursue the king's son. She's like, no problem. And so they closed the door. She was there, it seemed like minutes, when all of a sudden there was a knock at the door once again. Knock, knock, knock. She's like, hello, yes. I said, actually, it's time to pursue the king's son now, hag number one. She's like, what do you mean? I can't pursue the king. I just got in here. It's supposed to be tomorrow. I said, well, actually, like, today is tomorrow. You must have been up all night. It's time now to pursue. She's like, I'm not ready. It's too early. It's too quick. They led her out of the room at the back of the castle. In the backside of the castle, there was nothing but green grass in front of her, with a rock country road riding down as far as her eye could see. Massive thorn brush off in the distance, and a massive mountain in the very, very back. And between her and all of that was the king's son on his white horse, looking good. She's like, hi, I've missed you. He's like, hi. Like, listen, it's time to pursue the king's son. She's like, no problem. Where's my horse? He said, actually, you don't get a horse. She's like, what do you mean I don't get a horse? Like, he has a horse. If I'm going to pursue him, I need a horse of my own. Like, we're sorry, you got to pursue the king's son, but you don't get a horse. She's like, this is unfair. This is actually a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. In fact, if I don't get a horse in this whole thing, I'm not even going to cooperate. I'm not going to chase after you without a horse. And so, with that fact, I'm going to leave. I'm out of here. But before she could leave, the king's son on his white horse looked at her with a twinkle in his eye. He said, I'm worth it. And she's like, and he took off on his horse as fast as he could go. You ever seen Looney Tunes? Like when people take off really fast in Looney Tunes, first his legs spinning, rocks flying, and she took off down that road as fast as she possibly could go. Beautiful dress, high heels, flying. You ever ran really fast at first as objects, and eventually it's just colors going by? I mean, she is hauling. When all of a sudden she hits a rock and boom, blows out her high heel. Flying through the air, hits the ground, boom, 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 and finally skids to a stop. And she gets up and she's lost a tooth and her mouth is bleeding and her dress is all torn up, scraped to shreds. All of a sudden she realizes her high heel's gone. She looks up and the king's son's not on the road anymore, but now he's on the other side of the huge briar bush. Thorns all on the way. She's like, time out. First of all, I didn't realize that I wasn't going to get a horse in this whole thing. I ran down that road as fast as I could go. Did you see me? I was like Flojo. And then I blew up my high heel. I flew through the air, broke my tooth. I'm bleeding everywhere. Everything's scraped up. Like, this is way harder than I anticipated. This is really difficult. And now you're not even here, but now you're on the other side of this thorn bush. I'm done. I'm going home. I'm not going to do this anymore. But before she could leave and turn and go away, the king's son on his white horse looked at her and he said, what? I'm worth it. She's like, you got to say it like that. And so she ran as fast as she could right into the thorn bushes and biting through them and scraping through them, grabbing her hair, grabbing her dress. And she's just like a wild animal trying to get through. When she gets on the other side, finally she's like, where are you? Where are you? And the king's son's not on the side of that side of the thorn bush anymore. He's gone. Now he's on top of the massive mountain. She's like, time out. I didn't get a horse. Very unfair. I ran down that rock country road as fast as I possibly could. I'm still scraped up from that. My shoes are still ruined. That dress was super nice until now. I came through all those thorn bushes. They're stuck all on my skin. I'm bleeding everywhere. My dress is torn. My hair is matted. This is far too much work. I didn't realize it was going to be all of this. And so for that reason, I'm out. Before she could turn to leave, the king's son on his white horse on top of the mountain looked down with a glimmer in his eye. He said, I'm worth it. She's like, gotta say it like that. And she starts running up the side of the mountain as fast as she could go, like jumping rock to rock, grabbing like Tarzan, killing billy goats, all kinds of stuff. Rocks coming down, hitting her in the head. She can't remember her name. She's finally getting to the top of the mountain. She's like, where are you? Where are you? And again, he's not on top of the mountain. But now this time he's on the other side of the mountain, out in the vast desert. She's like, time out. I didn't get a horse. I hurt myself on that rock country road. I went through all those briar bushes. I'm still picking them out of my skin. I came up this mountain. I jumped rock. I think I killed a billy goat. I can't remember my name. I broke an arm. And here I am looking for you, and you're not here anymore. This is far too much work. It's not worth it. I'm out of here. But before she could leave and turn and walk away, the king's son, on his white horse with a glimmer in his eye, he said, what? I'm worth it. She's like, you gotta say it like that. And she started running down the other side of the mountain as fast as she could go. You ever ran down a hill before and everything's cool at first? And then your feet get too far out, and all of a sudden she started rolling down the side of this hill like, as you wish, all the way to the bottom. She hits the ground at the far end. Some of y'all will get that later. She jumps up, starts running into the sand as fast as she could possibly go, and she is hauling into the sand. She can see the king's son on his white horse way off in the distance. She's running as fast and as hard as she can. And eventually her tongue is like swollen. There's nothing to drink. It's so hot. And eventually her running turned to like fast walking. And her fast walking turned to just walking. And eventually she is dragging herself through the desert, through the sand to get to the king's son. And eventually she can go no further. So she speaks something to the wind, and she lays her head down, and she dies. Now, the king's son, who was far off and saw everything, was touched to the core. He rode back on his horse. He jumped off his horse and walked over to hag number one laying in the sand, and he said to the wind, what were her last words? She said, I've loved thee in life. I've loved thee in death. I've loved thee as long as thou lendest me breath. And if ever I've loved thee, my Jesus, it's now. And a single tear rolled down the king's son's cheek. It fell and hit hag number one right in the face, and all of a sudden her color came back, her fingers began to move, and she looked up and saw him, and she jumped up and grabbed him and said, I've got you. I'm not letting you go. I'm not letting you go. The truth is, and we've talked about a lot of information over the past couple of days. We've covered a lot of stuff. And the truth is, the most basic of all truths is this, that every single one of us in this room, we're all hags. We all have blemishes and scars and sins and mistakes. It's a part of every single one of us. But the other basic truth is that every single one of us, we are loved by God. And God has this way of taking us and transforming us and making us new. But I believe that many of us in the room who've already made that decision to become a follower of Jesus, what the Bible calls a disciple, we enter in now to the most important part of our walk and our journey with God. It's the pursuit of the King's Son. Every single day pursuit. And here's what I can promise you. Just like in this story, like the pursuit of the King's Son is not easy. It's incredibly difficult. It will cost us something. In fact, the Bible says it like this in Matthew chapter 16, verse 24. Jesus is speaking to his disciples. He says, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it. Whoever loses their life for my sake will find it. What good will it be for someone to gain the entire world and yet forfeit their soul? What good will it be to earn the whole world but forfeit our soul? If you're going to be a disciple of Jesus, it's going to cost you something. There's going to be a difficulty involved. We got to take up our cross every single day. You may lose some friendships over it. There may be some kind of status, popularity that you want so badly, but because of your decision to be a disciple, you may lose that. There may be some things that you've really wanted to do your entire life, and maybe some things that nobody knows about what you really want badly, but you're going to say no to it because it's going to get in the way of being a disciple. If you want to be a Christian and a follower of Christ, it's going to cost you something every single time. But here's what I can promise you from my own experience. Following Jesus is worth all of it. It's worth it. Whatever it might cost, it's worth it. Whatever it might cost, the benefits far outweigh it. My decision to be a Jesus follower and a disciple of Christ many years ago is the best decision, hands down, I've ever made in my entire life. And I'll be very honest with y'all. I know you go to Ben Lippen, and I know after being a CIU student for many years, I know what it's like maybe to come and the Bible be a part of your curriculum, or for Jesus to be part of what it means to go to school. And I want to encourage you guys. The Christian life is not some test that you just study for and answer all the questions right and then boom, you've got it. The Christian life is a relationship. And there's difficulties that come along the way. But if you commit to the relationship with Jesus, it doesn't matter what it costs you, it is worth it to continue to follow him and fall more and more in love with him. And so if I could say nothing else to you today, this would be the most important thing I could say. Follow Jesus with your entire life. No matter what it costs, I can promise you it will be worth it. Would you pray with me today? Jesus, I pray that today you might get to our hearts. I know for a lot of people maybe in the room, you've gotten to their head, like they know information about you. They know things about you. But I pray that today, God, you would help that information become transformation. That it would get to their hearts. I pray for many today, God, they wouldn't do the right thing because they feel like it's a test. They would do the right thing because they really love you and they want to do what's right. And I pray for many today, God, that maybe have been turned off from you for many different reasons. I pray that today, God, you would awaken within them a deep love for you. And I pray, God, that whatever difficulties we have along the way, whatever struggles we go through, I pray that we would see that you are worth it. God, we want to build our life around you. Would you show us how to do that? Would you make us faithful people? We're thankful for your love. We're thankful for your grace. And we are thankful for your mercy. And we want to take this moment right now, just a few moments before we finish up this day, to turn our attention to you. And maybe for many today, like they've been skating through, ready to go home, and I pray that they would not miss these moments, these minutes where I pray, God, your spirit would be thick in this room. Lord, we love you. It's in your name that we pray. Amen.
You can stand and sing with us, or if you need to sit, that's fine too. Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name, and Jesus, the only one who could ever sing, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. And holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are, and fill me with your heart and lead me in your arms to those around me. Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. We live for you. And Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. We live for you. And holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder
Can you hear me? It's been a really good week, and it's such a blessing to just look out and worship our Savior together in person. We've heard a lot of good truth. We started by talking about how the Lord is most high, how he's our shepherd, how he changes every part of us. He changes our heart, and that should result in the words that we use, and that he's worth following. And our prayer here at Ben Lippen really is that you guys would see the joy that's found in following Jesus, that it's not duty, that it's not a have to, that it's a get to, and it's the best adventure this life has to offer. So really, if any of y'all have questions and you're confused on what that looks like, you know that you have a lot of teachers around you and a lot of people that would love to process that. But huge win. Thank you, Trevor. Thank you, Mr. Caldwell and Ms. McLeod. This week has been such a gift.